Alright, let's get started on building our laser setup. You'll need some super glue, some sort of strong glue, a laser light of course, that is the basis of our cymatics, a fairly large balloon that's going to be stretching over our can, a steel can. I've noted that the aluminum cans and plastic cans don't really work as well, so a steel can, and you'll need to remove both ends to create a hollow tube. As you can see, this is our finished product here. It's going to be a stretched balloon with a mirror over the center of it, glued in the middle there. So of course we're going to need some sort of a small mirror. Here I've got a mirror that's part of a dollhouse set actually, and my daughters were okay to let me have that. And the idea is we're going to be gluing that mirror in the center of our little membrane that we create here around this steel can. So as you can see, it's actually cut through, and so you need to make sure that the edges are not sharp at all. And so the first thing you'll need to do is I'll go ahead and take this mirror off, and I'll reuse it for the sake of this demonstration. So again, the idea is that I'm going to have a node in the middle of my membrane, and I need that mirror to be centered in that membrane. So of course I'm going to be using this end. It is the smooth end of the can. This can also has a smooth end, but it's a little bit jagged right there, and I could file it down, but for the sake of this I just went ahead and used this end. The idea is that we're going to have a membrane on one end, leave the other end open to be adjacent to a speaker, and by shining the laser light on that mirror that's on the membrane, we'll then see the reflection of that movement on the wall that we'll see in the video. So one other thing we'll need is a pair of scissors, because we do need to cut the balloon stem off. So I'm going to cut the stem off at just about the end of the stem. I want to leave a little bit of the curvature because that will help ensure that the balloon stays snug on the can. So just at the end I'm going to cut somehow here. Make sure your scissors are sharp. And of course I'm going to stretch this balloon membrane over the end of the can. So of course I've chosen this end to be my end and stretch that fairly taut. So sometimes the balloon has a little dip there or protrusion, so that's alright. Go ahead and get that in the center, and again, get it as taut as you can. The more tight it is, the better your images will form in the cymatics. A very loose membrane will not show the cymatics very well. So again, we're going to need to put our balloon, our mirror in the center of the balloon. Now I've got a little bit of material here on the mirror, so I'll go ahead and get that off before I place it, because again I need this to be as flat and centered as possible. Now that's going to do well. Now just being off-centered a little bit will cause a little bit of alteration in the cymatics, as well as not being entirely flat by having too much former balloon residue. So make sure you get that off of there. I think that'll do fine. So now I'm just going to place a small dab of this strong super glue on the back of the mirror. And again, the idea is that I'm not going to really place this too permanently, but get a small enough dab to hold it on but not ooze out, because I don't want to make this membrane any more rigid than it actually is. So I need that to be nice and flexible. So again, I'm placing the mirror right in the center of the membrane, and I'm going to set that aside to dry, and that'll be pretty much it. And you'll see in the next part of this setup I will show you how to place the cymatics rig up against a large speaker. I use a guitar or bass amp, and that certainly allows me to have enough deep and bass notes that are going to be low frequency for these size cymatics rigs that I have. Again, if you were to use a smaller diameter tube and a more tight membrane, then you could actually use much higher frequencies. So again, the looser the membrane, the lower the frequencies, and of course the larger the membrane, the lower the frequencies. That's been my experience anyhow. So that's it. Now it's time to go ahead and go set up the cymatics rig in front of the speaker, and I'll show you how the laser light needs to be set up. So again, the idea, I'll turn my light off here so you can see. The idea is that, excuse me, we're going to be having sound come through this right here, through the can, and I'm going to have the laser light centered on the mirror so that as the membrane wiggles and jiggles, it will be causing a Lisa-Ju figure on the wall with the lasers. Let's check it out. Alright, and here we have the Laser Cymatics rig set up on the speaker. As you can see, I've got a laser light shining on the mirror, and that is then reflecting off the mirror. I need to center it a little bit more. That's reflecting off the mirror onto the wall. And so what we see is just a point of light on the wall. And as you'll see in just a moment, I'll hook up a tone generator to the speaker and play a single tone and see what happens to this point of light. I'll also turn out the rest of the lights so we can see it a little easier. Alright, here we have 120 Hertz being played through the Cymatics setup with the laser pointed at the mirror turned into a point of light. Now, that point of light has become a ring. And you see as I decrease the focus, it's kind of hard to see, but that is just a point of light. And as I raise the volume, that point becomes a circle. This is the fundamental aspect of cymatics, that a single point of light is actually moving around so fast that to our perception, and even to the perception of this camera, we see a circle. But again, it is just a single point of light moving around so fast. In fact, the frame rate of this camera, you can see a slight rotation clockwise, and that would be the rotation, the direction of rotation of that point of light. It is moving in a clockwise ellipse as we see it. However, it looks from our perception to be just a stationary ellipse. Now I'll refocus the camera and add in a few other frequencies and show you what happens when we see multi-frequency laser cymatics. So now I've added in 84 Hertz to the 120, and we see this somewhat solar system type bullseye design just by adding in 84 Hertz. And if I increase the volume of 84 Hertz, I see that I get this shape that's somewhat of a knot. Now I can change 120 Hertz and keep 84 going. Now let's change 120 Hertz to say 110 Hertz. And we see we get this incredible shape that seems to rotate in this other dimension. There, I'm just turning the volume up on the whole setup. Let me reduce 84, no, raise 84, oh wow. Doesn't that quite look like a symbol of the atom? Now again, this is slightly angled because my membrane isn't quite flat right there in the center. As you saw, my balloon had a little dip. And so if I were to have a completely flat membrane, I would be seeing this from a normal perspective, meaning from a 90-degree angle of this image, but it seems a little askew because my balloon isn't quite flat. I'm going to change 82 Hertz to, or 84 Hertz to 82 Hertz. And look what happens just by changing 2 Hertz. The speed has reduced. And it almost seemed like the direction changed as well. Let's go back to 84 Hertz. Again, yeah, it seems to be rotating clockwise. Changing it to 82 Hertz. Rotating counterclockwise. Now, something I found very interesting with laser cymatics is something I call the Stillness Theorem. And the Stillness Theorem basically uses the concept of common divisors. So let's, for instance, look at 90 Hertz alone. I'm going to turn off 82 Hertz, and that's 120 or 110 there. But let's look at 90 Hertz. So it seems to produce a straight line, but as I've noted that this is really another circle just at an angle. Now 90 hertz and 60 hertz. Look at that, a still image. Let's focus, there we are. Now 90 and 60 are both divisible by 30, and they are 30 apart. So I've noticed that when the distance between the two frequencies divides both frequencies, I get a still image. Now let's change 60 hertz to 63 hertz, and notice I get a moving image. Now another number that divides 90 would be 15, so let's look at 15 less than 90, so let's go to 75 and 90. And we have another still image. It is blinking, however it is still. Notice there's no rotation. 15 divides both 75 and 90. Let's bring it back into focus. 15 divides both 75 and 90, and 15 is the distance between the two. Let's change 75 to, say, 79. I think I had changed it to 77 there before, and that's to 79. And notice now we get an image that seems to rotate through space. Let's try that once more. Let's pick a frequency. This is 90 hertz playing right now. Let's stop that. Let's pick, say, I'm drawing 55 off the top of my head. So the lower the notes, the larger the image. So I'll have to zoom out a little bit. So again, that can be seen as a circle, just horizontally rather than orthonormally. So here we have this 55. Now obviously 11 and 5 divide 55. So if I were to pick, say, 66, now I haven't tried this before, but I should get a still image, if there's anything at all. Now it's a little sideways, it seems, so I'm going to turn the volumes down on both of those. But it does appear that the main aspects of the image, see these two peaks here, and over here there's another peak here and a peak here, they don't seem to be rotating at all. It seems to be quite still, but a little bit, unfortunately, sideways. So let's try, instead of 55 and 66, let's try 44 and 66. I'm getting some images that are quite sideways. So again, this is something you'll explore in your cymatics, that you have to figure out which frequencies will work best. Now this is a fairly large, these low frequencies don't seem to be working out well, so let's go back up. Alright, there we are. I have 88 and 66. Again, they are 22 apart. 22 divides both 88 and 66, and I have a still image. Let's change 88 to 81, and now I'll have movement. And sure enough, I do. I can decrease the volume of single frequencies, and that will change the image in some regards. So it seems that 81 is controlling how the image appears this way. Now let's see if I change the volume of the 66, what that will do. Interesting that it changed now this way. Alright, well, that's a nice image of a circle right there. Let's go ahead and keep that. That happens to be 81. I'm just going to throw 120 in there just to see what happens. I'll slowly raise the volume, turn it on, and slowly raise the volume. Wow, look at that. It's almost as if there's a circle inside the other circle. It's decreased the volume of 120 again. And I have a stable, stationary circle. Increase the volume slightly, and it becomes slightly chaotic. And if you can notice here, there is a wiggle that orbits that circle around. And that wiggle is going to slowly become more apparent. See, I can notice it now more that I pointed it out. And if I increase the volume ever so slightly to 120, that wiggle would become its own orbit inside the other. Look at that. Now to me that looks like a spirograph image. If you've ever used a spirograph, you rotate that inside of another object and it creates this image. But this almost appears as if it's the spirograph itself. Now if increasing the volume of the 120 just bends that inner circle into a heart shape almost, and now it's almost interesting. It is a heart that seems to be rotating through there. I'll decrease that down a little bit because that sort of a bend or a pinch does tell me of a negative interference in the membrane. I'll decrease 81. Wow. Incredible. So this is multi-frequencies using two frequencies, and as I said, I've shown you the Stillness Theorem. But I'd like to show you the concept of ever-evolving and growing forms, and that involves using the concept of binaural beats. And I like to use finaural beats, where finaural beats are described to be binaural beats that use the golden ratio phi, or phi squared, or 1/2 of phi, or 1/phi, some sort of use of phi. So let's go ahead and stop 120, give us back that 81 hertz circle. And now let's consider 82.618. Now I'm approximating phi with 1.618. Now I'll decrease volume and raise it ever so slightly. And now I should get a figure that is manipulated based on an oscillation of 1.618 hertz. That means there's 1.618 cycles for every second. In other words, this would need to take 1,618 seconds to complete full cycles over again. Now I'm going to add in a third frequency. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another one of these online generators. I use onlinetonegenerator.com. So I had used 81 and 82.618. Now let's do 81.618. That is 1/phi. And there we are. We see quite a more dramatic wiggle. Now just to see what would happen, I'm going to add in 120 hertz. As I saw before with 81 hertz, 120 hertz definitely added something interesting. That inner wiggle. Now we have that inner wiggle again, but now oscillating through these binaural beats. So I'll go ahead and stop that. Now I'll add in 1.618 on top of the 82.618. 84.234. That's 236, sorry. And now we see this figure start to grow and dance and evolve. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a stillness with this. So remember, I've got 81 hertz. 9 divides 81. So what if I were to put 90 in here? 9 divides 90 and 81, and it'd be 9 apart. Oh wow. Listen to that. Incredible. I'm going to add in another one. I'm going to add in half of 9 away from 90, 94.5. as you can see, I'll go ahead and take out 90. Let's see what's left there. Getting a little bit of a static. I'll take out 94.5. Interesting. So as you can see that by adding more and more frequencies, it increases the complexity of the image. And there we go, 94.5 again with some of those with 91 taken out, or sorry, 90 taken out. And so we can see that this is highly complex form just by 5 frequencies being played together. So imagine what can happen with a whole world of frequencies. Like increase 81 and 94.5 are the two bounds. Very interesting. I'm going to take out a few of these. Let's see, I'll take out 81.618. Try to slow the image down a bit. Alright, so now we've got this image not quite so fast, moving around in different directions. I'll take out one more. Go 94.5 and 81. Notice it's again a still image. Why? Because 4.5 now divides both of these numbers. 9 divides 81, but does not divide 94.5. However, because 94.5 is 4.5 away from 90, I know that 4.5 does divide 94.5. Therefore, both of these numbers have a divisor in common that also divides their difference, and thus a still image. Even though this is blinking and oscillating up and down in terms of our perception, the actual image that we see remains consistent. That line right there is right there all the time. Even though it's blinking, it's just not moving. And if I were to change 94.5 to 94.6, let's see what happens. Rotation. Look at these lines. Pick one and see that it rotates down. Pick one and it rotates down. It's moving slightly, but it's moving. None of these are staying still. In fact, I'm seeing a rotation sort of out of the wall, down, up into the wall, and back out again. I'll change that to 94.8. And again, I've got that rotation very clearly defined. Let's see, try to increase the volume a little bit. It's a little wobbly, but there, I can definitely see that it's rotating. And again, that rotation is because these tones do not have any divisor in common that divides their distance between them.